Hey, is this mic even fucking on? Piece of shit.
Hello, I'm Stu Rolls and welcome back to another episode of the Back in the Band podcast. The show where we remember a simpler time in our lives when music and being in a band back in the day meant you could actually dream of one day living the life of a rock and roll star. But instead of such lofty heights, today we'll be reminiscing on mellowing out in the studio, upgrading your shitty original gear, and college teachers letting rip. Before we do though, time to bring in today's co-host for the day, a man who never gets bored of getting his ass kicked on Pro Evo 6 on the PS2. It's Dave Bentley.
Hi there.
Here we go again, bringing back some band chat with another guy who suffered Huddersfield University in the noughties, mate. So our guest today for this episode brings up the theme of YouTube tutorials and something that I wanted to ask you actually, how you got to learn guitar. What were you doing? Were you using tabs? Were you having a tutor? Was it self-taught?
So when I first decided I wanted to learn, my dad had got a student, because my dad was an English teacher, who could play the guitar, that played in some covers bands, I think.
Robbie Williams covers bands, was it?
Don't think so. I think he was a bit cooler than me. I don't know, I guess bunged him a bit of money and he would just teach me. He would just write out the lyrics to songs and then the chords above them. And we would just play them along and he would sing them. And that was how I'd learn.
On the acoustic, is this?
Just on acoustic guitar, yeah.
Yep.
Just strumming along, old Beatles songs, things like that. And then from there, he started teaching me little bits of tablature and I'd buy tab books. I remember because I definitely had Radiohead the Ben's tab book.
Oh, I'm just now remembering tab books. That was a thing, wasn't it? Like,
it was a real thing, yeah. I'm not even talking internet. Like, I remember the first point I really knew of the internet, my auntie had got it. And when I went to stay with her, I printed off 500 pages of tabs from Olga Tabs, I think it was called. I just printed off just absolutely everything to take home with me.
With no idea whether there were always like mistakes and stuff, so you'd always be like correcting.
Yeah,
them
100%.
as well.
And to be completely honest, I don't think I was ever disciplined enough to really pay attention to it. Anyway, what I would do is I'd learn where it began on like the fretboard and then just pick it up by ear from there or learn my own version of how it went.
Yeah, no, it's just mad to remember that because I wonder now, again, being 37 and not a child trying to badly play the bass, like I wonder, do 13-year-olds still use tabs, or is it literally like I'm going to watch YouTube and that's it? I don't know.
I reckon they probably do use tabs, but I think there's more kind of play along stuff. YouTube will play a really large part in it, and I reckon they'll learn so much quicker and just be so much better at it.
Yeah, because it would I remember so many people that I knew who were learning and they'd have tutors and they'd go, right, I want to learn this. They have to go to their tutor, tell them, and they'd spend, if they have an hour lesson, half of it will be the tutor trying to work out how to play it. To then say, oh, by the way, this is actually how you play it. But yeah, just another world, man. But speaking of another world, in this one where we no longer have to load CDs into the boot of the car to make our dad listen to our latest terrible mixtape, let's get going.
Today's guest is Ben Heslop. I first met Ben at the resident bar on the student campus at university. It was the first night of a new grown-up adventure, and myself and my new flatmates were trying to get to know each other as quickly and as awkwardly as possible. I broke the tension by suggesting we try and work out how old the guy at the bar was, for it's safe to say that Ben appeared to have already had a fair few grown-up adventures of his own. I had the job of ascertaining the correct answer, and we hit it off from there. But we're not here to talk about any of that. We want to know about Ben's misguided foray into the alternative music scene of the 1990s, the left turns in life that led him to beat the Skins in the best-named band in the North. Ben, welcome to Back in the Band. Great to have you with us.
Awesome to see you both. Thank you for having me.
So, to get us in the mood, tell us what your vibe was back in the band days. What were you guys listening to?
I just started sixth form, which, to put in context, was 1997. I was very much a grunge kid, so it was all like what you'd expect from the American arts. Nirvana was obviously the gold standard. It was like a real awakening. I'd moved out of a really small town where I was like the only person who had blonde curtains my age and looked like a 6'4" girl. And then suddenly I was with loads of people who looked like that, and that was really cool. There were some older kids in the village, and they were really formative in forming like where my music went. But there was no one in my sort of age group So there was a lot of new stuff going around, and Britpop was going off, and I quite liked Britpop. I was really pleased that my sixth form media studies teacher, her son-in-law, was the drummer in Pulp.
Really?
Oh, there you go.
I was into that. Well, I mean, this is it. We're surrounded by greatness, aren't we?
Did you hear that? I just wonder if you heard that name drop. Did you?
Yes, I heard it land, I think.
Never met him, but I did get a pair of signed drumsticks off the beautiful Mrs. Worth. It was his mother-in-law, and I ran out of sticks in my rock and roll days, and then thought Pulp is like a little bit crap, so I'll just use these sticks. I'm not even bothered. And I just used them until they broke. But so it was a reawakening, but it was mainly I was a big grunge kid.
I really enjoyed the description of you looking like a 6'4" blonde girl with really wide shoulders and thin waist.
Yeah, I had the wide shoulders, but I was really skinny back then. And the curtains just from the back, I'm sure many men would have. Anyway, we digress.
He's really committed to the curtains. The photo of you, it was a look that looked quite cultivated.
Did you get any shit for that, or was it just because it was cool at the time to look like
Oh,
that?
constantly, yeah, because they were very unaccepting in where I was from. And as I say, the older lads that I hang around with, which were really cool, as I'd started secondary school, I think they were in the last year, so they'd probably left. And then it was just me being weird in everyone's eyes, and everyone else was wearing... Were Eclipse jackets a thing round your way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember Eclipse jackets.
Little bomber jackets with little Rasta men on the back, and not really liking music. Or it was all like dance music and stuff like that. I was like walking around in flares that I'd made myself from material that I'd found, and just got normal jeans and made them super wide. And
oh man, what, like cutting it up the side and then adding
just
something
sticking
in?
a bit of adding in to make flares and stuff. So,
like Charlie Chalk.
I mean, when you say it like that, I mean, I should have been ridiculed. Really, I wish I had some pictures of that.
You were deserving, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, arriving at sixth form in the big metropolis of Carlisle, suddenly there was a load of people into a load of different stuff, and I no longer stood out. Weirdly, there was a gang of us. There was other people shopping for secondhand leather jackets and not wanting to go to the club and stuff. So yeah, it was a real cool time for me. I felt like I was hitting my stride. If only I could be in a band, I thought. And then.
Nice segue, mate. I enjoyed that one. So tell us, you got into bands. Tell us about the first band that you were in.
The band, I think, because we cannot claim to be in more than one band, and it was a short-lived thing anyway, which makes it even more beautiful. So basically, I bought a drum kit when I was about 14. Now, those of you that are doing the math here will realise that means I've been playing drums for about 3 years, so should have been fairly competent. But it basically consisted of not trying to be in a band, sitting in my room, listening to stuff on my headphones and drumming along to it. There was no YouTube Kids. No one was getting self-taught on the internet, and there was no drum coaches nearby, and I definitely wasn't on the budget to travel for one. And I just enjoyed it. So I got there, and to the people that I met, their band was just coming to an end, and they gigged quite a bit, and they were the eponymously named Shirley's Temple.
I think that is just magnificent, that name.
Oh, you love that, don't you? So Shirley's Temple, I'd seen flyers for them. They were of that level. They had photocopied flyers sort of thing. And their drummer, who was known as Pinchy Evans.
Right. Do we know the reason for that? Or is it just that? Or is it just folklore?
But I don't know whether I can say. Obviously, if we all think about times when we're all, our eyes are a little bit pinchy. I think he was...
Oh, okay. I think that's actually better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, not like he had eyes like he thieved everything. He was a really good drummer, by the way. And he'd gone to uni or gone to something or that. And anyway, this had caused a rift with Shirley's Temple, and everyone else was left. And then the lead singer went away to uni as well, so that kind of ended that. But they were all like my mates, apart from Pinchy Evans, because I was really jealous of him and he'd already gone. So the remaining members needed a drummer. I dropped out of sixth form already in year one. It was too much. I was doing photography, history and media studies, and I dropped the history because it was like that was like work. So then I was just doing media studies photography. And then I said, can I drop media studies? And they said, look, lad, there's no way you're going to go to sixth form, just do photography. I was like, oh, fuck it, I won't do any of it then. But then we all decided we were going to start at the Carlisle Art College at the time, which is now part of the university. And we're doing a popular music course. So we thought, yeah, let's do that. So we all started on the popular music course. No, actually, I tell you a lie. They did, and I did performing arts, realised it was full of people I hated, and then by default said, I'm going to go on the popular music course with my mates because we're going to start a band, aren't we? So we started a band, and that was where Monkey 500 was born. Which was
now we need
band.
to know why Monkey 500 was chosen as a band name.
I don't know what the link is, being that we're all good card-carrying northerners, but a monkey is Cockney for 500. So we just called it, basically it's called 500, 500, but Monkey 500. I don't know, I can't remember any more about where we got that reference from or why we thought it was good, but that was what we were called, Monkey 500.
So Monkey 500 then, man, tell me like a little bit more musically, what kind of stuff is that?
It was more of the same. It was just that grunge element of basic chord progressions, quite heavy, like, no offense to Mr. Tom, he would say it himself, pretty bad vocals. We used to spend quite a long time thinking about lyrics. I remember we all came to my mum and dad's house when they were away one weekend to have a lyric writing session.
Really?
But the stuff we came out with, when I listen back to it, I love listening to the lyrics, but I'm just like, what the heck does this even mean?
Yeah.
Tell me those song titles again. There was one that I really liked.
There's Midnight Express. There was the De Niro's, because we loved Robert De Niro. There was Song for Albania. I remember because that was part of our popular music course that we had to do piece. And I can't remember what was going on in the news, but we did a song for Albania at the time. I can't remember what were the other titles, Bentley. Which ones can you remember?
Let me have a look, because there was one that I really liked. But to be honest, now you've given me Song for Albania.
Yeah,
it's hard to really see past that.
There was a recording of us doing that at one of the only proper gigs that we did. I remember when we'd done it, Chris said at the end of it, like to muted applause, he said, sorry about that, was something we had to do for our popular music course and it's shit. Or something like that on the recording. That was how he filmed it. And we were getting like graded on this, and that was, yeah, probably not the best way to get a grade.
I like Message Girl.
Message Girl, yeah. Yeah, I just got to see Message Girl.
And Our Soul Distress.
Right, yeah, no, that's called Soul Distress. Because if you say it wrong, it was originally called Our Soul Distress, Collective Pain. Yeah. But then everyone used to say it quick, and you'd just say Our Soul Distress. And everyone would go, what did you just say? And we'd be like, oh, yeah, we should probably take the hour off there, shouldn't we? Because we cannot go on stage and shout Our Soul Distress.
Not after Song for Albania.
Another song we've just been shit. We've been writing it for our music course.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the vibe.
So you mentioned it a little bit. You did a live recording. Were there any other studio sessions with 500? The thousands, as we could call ourselves now. There was something to do with the course where there's a local recording studio, a place called Atlas Works, which is still in existence, but the recording studio isn't, where we got like, I think it was so ridiculous, like 2 one-week blocks in a recording studio. Now, most semi-professional bands would have absolutely killed for that. And it was amazing. And the gigs were one thing for me. I was very nervous to gigs. I hadn't gigged before. But the studio time was like, that was what I remember the most, because that was, doesn't get more rock and roll than that. We had a producer, we were in a studio, there was a couch. Yeah. We'd just get stoned and go in and say stuff about stuff and have to record stuff. At that point, there was nothing like that at the Art. So like, we were just practicing in little Anderson shelters and porter cabins. You know those rooms you have at your school where they just need to build an extra building, so they just build it out of wood? Yeah.
That was where the popular music course was, because obviously it was shit and no one cared. And suddenly we went from that to being in a proper studio. I remember there was another guy called Davy Campfire. He was something to do with the course, but he came in and he'd invented a mind machine. which was basically some goggles with some glasses on, and you went on this trip. I can't remember how all this occurred, but he said, "I'll bring it down the studio tomorrow, man." So we spent one morning on these VR goggles just looking at these lights, think about it though. I was like 17, 18 at this point. This is the dream. We're the band, man.
That just sounds like a scene out of That 70s Show, where they just go around the room stoned off their tits with these goggles on, man.
Who's paying for it?
Well, it was all part of the course, wasn't it?
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't realise that.
That's what I mean. Part of it was we got these 2 1-week blocks to record something.
Right, yeah.
Which, when you think back, that's ludicrous. And this must have been the first 2 terms of being on a popular music course. And they were giving us studio time.
How much time did you dedicate to the Mind Machine?
That was probably a good morning. The whole band had to have a go. David Campfire had to give an explainer. We had to describe what we saw when we were on it for his thesis or something. So, but there was it was crazy times in the studio. That was what I loved the most. But also it was really great because that was my introduction to learning how to mic up a drum kit and how to set. Because funnily enough, they weren't teaching us any of that on the popular music course.
Which I should have done. I'm interested though, Ben. What year was that?
That would have been 97, 98. Yeah,
so what, off the back of that, and I'm just thinking technology-wise, what would you have come away from those sessions with? Would you guys have got a burnt CD? Not even burnt CDs, would you? What would you come out of that with?
I think we had a tape.
Yeah.
I think we came away with a tape. Because I remember my mum, bless her, when I was in my early 20s, there was someone offering, "We will put your tapes on CD." And there was a tape of me and mum and dad telling me stories when I was about 3 that she had, and me just chatting away as a 3-year-old. And that she went and got those tapes and put them on CD. And then, of course, hence why it's still in circulation, because we could put it on the computer.
But that's the thing. If you think that technology, CDs were around then, definitely. You were buying CDs in the 90s, right? But
yeah.
To be able to burn easily, having a CD burner, I'm sure you would have had a studio, but CD burners wouldn't have been...
No, not really.
No, not at all.
Speaking of gear then, you were obviously a drummer. What kit were you using? Did you always have the same one?
I was a two-kit drummer, Steve. I had the kit that I bought from a man's flat in Wigton with my dad when I was 14, which didn't have a name on it. It was black, is about all we're going for with that one. And I think I paid £150 for that. And that was my go-to, covered in stickers. Very basic setup. And then I upgraded. And when another friend of mine who had a nice, I think it was a Premier? No. Yeah, Premier. Yeah.
Premier.
He had a really nice Premier white kit, and I didn't like the fact it was white because that was way too clean for my image. But he was rich and soon went off it, and I sidled in and saved up my money and bought his kit off him. So that was like my lead kit, but I don't have much love for that kit. My kit was the kit I got when I was 14, which I can't tell you what it was. It was old and knackered. And there was definitely no Zildjian cymbals on it, sort of thing. But that was the bedroom kit, the one I always loved.
Love that.
How were you getting that stuff around? How would you get to gigs?
So I had one kit in my bedsit, which I think Waff had a car and he came round in his Fiesta. Or there might have been one, I wouldn't have took my kit to the studio. This was there'd be just a studio kit or whatever. But yeah, I think someone had a car. There was cars in that day. There might not have been CD burners, David, but we had cars.
Come on, Waff. We want to know about Waff.
Waff was in another band. Waff still lives in Carlisle. I still see him now a bit. I can't remember what his band were called, but I remember he had a beautiful shot of him up a tree for one of his gigs. I should have remembered what Waff's band. So you don't think about this stuff, and then suddenly you get asked a question, you think, oh yeah, Waff and his band, what were they called?
I've never thought about Waff in my life.
I'm not going to stop thinking about Waff moving forward.
He was a lovely lad.
So what happened to the guys? What happened with Monkey 500?
Well, that's the thing. First off, we had a gig in the Twisted Wheel, which was like the local club. And then we had a couple of gigs at the Front Page. But then it didn't go anywhere because mainly we probably weren't that good. And also, I hate to break it to you at this point in the proceedings, lads, but I left the popular music course. I decided it wasn't for me. So I left the course, and there's one of the most rock and roll things ever happened to me. I think he was called Tim Earl? I can't remember. He was one of the tutors on there. He was a great guy and probably had our best interests at heart. We could not take him seriously at all. I think his nickname was the Earl of Churl. And he came up to us and we were having a fag outside. And I just told whoever that me and Chris Tom were leaving the popular music course. And he stormed up and he came raging up going, I've just been told you've left. And we were like, yeah, we have. Like, it's just not for us. And he was like, do you realise what you're doing? And I was thinking, why are you going on like us like we're actually good? This is weird. And his parting shot was, I remember, I can picture it now, outside the front of Carlisle Art College. And he looked at me and Chris and he set us dead straight in the eyes and he went, how am I supposed to make you famous now? And then walked off. And I just thought this was the most nonsensical set. It was just ridiculous. I was like, we were never going to be famous. We've done like 2 gigs. We're clearly not got what it takes. We're not even like a thing. Oh, the only people that would know of Monkey 500 were like the people I'm telling about it now, or people who are actually at that, and they'll have hopefully forgotten. It wasn't like we were a band on a scene like a lot of your bands. And I just thought, what a stupid thing to say.
But did he say, was he being serious? There's not like any sort of sense of irony.
Oh, no. He was raging. He was raging.
That's mad. So tell us, I haven't heard too much about the gigs. Was there any standout memories or any of these gigs for 500 squared?
Yeah, the one at the Wheel, I remember we got paid in beer and we ripped into that early on, as you would. And then we got free entry into the Wheel afterwards. So that was pretty cool to hang around with the 17 people that were in the Twisted Wheel afterwards. And then the one at the front page, because there was quite a few bands on that night because it was an organised event where we had to play songs for Albania, whatever it was. And that was really good because that was, in the Wheel, you were at like audience level. So you were just eyeballing. That 17 people were in the club, like 7 of them probably saw us, sort of thing. So you were just stood eyeballing 7 people who were watching you play a few songs. But at the page, to this day, the stage is still there. There's an amazing stage, and it's like I don't need to explain to everyone what a venue looks like, but it's a great rectangle-shaped, high-staged venue. So that there was a room in the back, where it was proper, and you were the next band on, so you were in your little room at the back, and then you had to come out on stage, and there was maybe like, I want to say 300 people there. So I reckon there was probably about 120. Because if I'm saying 300, I reckon there was probably...
I'd take 120 is decent, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, even half in it and minus 30, we're still talking. That was by far my biggest gig. So that was like a real big moment of coming out on stage there. I remember I was so nervous on the first bit, I crashed the start of it. I remember I was so nervous and then I just went, doosh, and hit both the cymbals and then just realised and didn't do anything. and then it all kicked off after that. And But it was a great gig. There was lots of applause from the masses, ranging from 100 to 120 to 300 people. And I remember coming off stage feeling pretty euphoric, but we were under no illusions because we did tell everyone that the Albanian song for Albania was shit and we apologised, but we had to do it.
Are you glad that you did it? Do you miss it?
Oh, without doubt. I'd probably stick at it and try and make something of it. I genuinely, I definitely wouldn't do anything different. It's one of the least successful things I've done, but one of the best things I've done in the sense of, if you grow up with love of music, I was brought up in a house where records were played all the time. Yeah. Tapes were being given to me by older boys from the age of 6 onwards. Music has always been like a huge part of my life. So to end up in a band at any point is just, of course, it was absolutely perfect and I loved every minute of it. If I were to do it all again, I'd probably try to be a bit better or put more effort in. But it's almost quite nice that, not just for the benefit of this podcast, I hasten to add, but it's almost quite nice that it was just a thing. And then I went away, I went to sea. That's another story, not for this podcast. And not because of Monkey 500 directly, I hasten to add. I wasn't banished. We weren't that bad. You can no longer live on the land. But yeah, and I never really revisited, but it certainly kept my love of music and bands and interest in creatives and art and all of that, which is still with me today.
I think if you keep it as something that was just a fond memory of something you did that you really enjoyed with your mates and stuff, and you never turned it into anything where you put any pressure on that you needed it to become something else, that's when it's magic, I think.
Yeah, I look back at it with that nostalgia and that magic. And I think if the studio time hadn't have happened, it would have been, I maybe wouldn't have even remembered as much about it. But that was, for me, that was very special. We were a band in a studio, everyone.
Do you think the Mind Machine has anything to do with you remembering that time so completely?
I might find out that David Campfire invented VR goggles or something, and I was actually right at the inception of VR goggles, and I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting one. But I'm pretty sure no. David Campfire was a very lovely gentleman. I remember him. I wonder what he's up to now. Probably still on his Mind Machine.
If you're out there, David Campfire, please write in.
He might be listening. Maybe he's already wired into my mind with the Mind Machine. Never left me.
So let's shift gears now and dive into the era when our music collection was driven entirely by how much music we'd definitely not stolen or maybe even bought on a CD or cassette. So, Ben, spill the beans, mate. Tell us the song that throws you right back to that time of being back in the band.
Pixies, Debaser. I didn't know the Pixies before I went to sixth form, and they were like my go-to at the time. Mark Ayton, who was in Shirley's Temple, said, "Oh, you got to like Frank Black, man." And I was like, "I don't know who this is, better go find out." And then I got into Frank Black. Teenager of the Year was the album of the moment. Absolute love that album still today. And then that got me into the Pixies. They were into the Pixies. I do little Trot Lamont that, you know. But Debaser for me had raw energy, that raw guitar, the screaming of Black Francis just screaming over and over again. And we used to hive off from sixth form, go back to Mark Ayton's mum and dad's house where Pinchy Evans' drums was sometimes left in the garage, so I'd get to have a go on those, and listen to the Pixies and eat cheese sandwiches made in a microwave. And I just loved that. The angst, and I still love the Pixies today. It's just such a beautiful memory of that anarchic time.
Debaser is the Pixies track for me as well. I think we listened to it a lot at uni, so I remember it from that. But yeah, that's a hell of a tune.
Were you listening to that on then, Ben? Was that CD at the time?
That would have been on CD, probably bought from either Pink Panther in Carlisle, which is an independent record store, which obviously hasn't lasted the test of time. And then we had a Virgin Megastore on an hour price, and that's where all my money would go. I amassed a huge CD collection. And yeah, it really was. That was my outlet, just buying and consuming music.
Have you still got that CD collection, or did you do the painful thing of selling it off?
Yeah, I did a 2-part painful thing. It was one of those things that are like, I remember when people used to get CD collections insured. By the time I was like 19, I probably had about, I don't know, 1,200, 1,300 CDs. And
Wow.
CDs weren't cheap. And I'd buy I'd save up and get imported versions and Japanese imports. And they're like, so it was a thing and it had a value. And then I got a bit too cool and was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got menswear in here. They're so crap Britpop. Sorry, menswear. I did actually like you and I still like you today. But it was that kind of vibe where I was like, oh, I'm not about that anymore. And instead of thinking it had been lovely to come back and visit that, I literally binned half the collection off.
It's funny, yeah. I remember doing that as well. Kind of being, this is embarrassing, or this isn't, my vibe isn't that anymore. So I'm going to streamline it rather than thinking, well, fuck this collectively. Everything on this shelf is me, whether it's A or Z. Yeah, it's such a weird thing to do that, thinking back. And I did exactly the same.
So then I was left with a collection that I thought was cool at the time. Then everything started streaming, and it just was it was out for way longer than it needed to be because I loved that collection. And whereas record crate diggers were that way, and I was that way on the shelves, and that was a real nostalgia. I love looking through and knowing where they all are, and just being able to go, oh yeah, that one. But then it finally got put away, and then it was the dreaded. Literally, when I moved house last year, there was probably about 800 left. And now, of course, Music Magpie will give you 3p for a perfectly decent album or something. And there was a few rarities in there. I sold off a couple that I knew were still like worth something, box sets, like Nirvana singles collection and things like that. And some of the Beatles EP collections and stuff that I'd really, my prize and joys. Didn't get rid of Smashing Pumpkins EP box set of Euphoria. That was, still got that. But I've now got it down to about, I don't know, maybe 300 ones that is fairly curated now. But I would much rather have the 1200 and be like, wow, the Spin Doctors.
Yeah.
Born on Blondes. Who knew why I bought that? That's great. I'm enjoying rebuilding the record collection. And mark my words, as I stand here talking to you today, I will never get rid of a record. But yeah, you learn by your mistakes.
Yep, that's the one. Mate, I think that's a really nice thing to finish on. But thank you very much for coming onto the pod.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
I really enjoyed hearing about our Waffy, or Waff.
Yeah, I see him about town every so often. Next time I see him, I'll say, Waff, what was your band called? I'll send you a text.
We'll dedicate this episode to Waff. Good stuff.
Thanks for coming on, mate. Appreciate it.
Lovely. Cheers, Benny.
No worries.
Hey there, rockers. This is James Hetfield from Metallica, and you've been tuning in to the Back in the Band podcast. Thanks for riding the lightning with us. Remember, this isn't a one-way conversation. Connect with us on Instagram. You can find us at Back in the Band Pod. Got something to say? Tweet us at Back in the Band. And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss the riff. Until next time, keep rocking, stay tuned, and stay metal.